Hello and welcome to the Boxing Life podcast with me, Tony Jeffries. On today's episode, we've got a rock star, Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters. Chris, how's it going, mate?
It's going very well. It's a wonderful Sunday.
Yeah, thank you for coming on this show. And alongside me, we've got Glenn, Mr. Six Figure Holmes. Chris,
How's
I don't know if you
everyone?
know this, we call him Six Figures because he earns
6 figures.
6 figures because he earns 6 figures doing personal training.
Yes,
and
he
we,
does.
And we found out that the average income for a personal trainer in America is 30 grand. So he's earning like 3-4 times more.
Yeah, we
than
just found
Five
that
of
out.
those 6 figures are from me.
Yeah, there you go.
My personal trainer. This
Yeah,
guy.
you know how much he charges. Yeah.
I just train Chris twice a week, and then the rest of the week I just sit on my ass.
Just kick it, baby.
So I'm excited to have you on here, Chris. So you're obviously the guitar player for the Foo Fighters.
Indeed.
Let's start off and tell me how all that come about, because these are one of the biggest bands in the world.
Well, I've been in the band coming up, this summer. It will be 18 years since I joined Foo Fighters.
Wow.
I joined in the summer of 1999. And I, at the time, I was playing a band called No Use for a Name that Glenn actually saw
In
way back when
1997.
he was a young boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was playing a band called No Use for a Name, and the opportunity came up to go try out for Foo Fighters, and I jumped at it. And I actually had a couple of auditions about a week apart, and after the second one, they called me the next day and were like, "You got the gig." So it's pretty much been go, go, go ever since.
How did you feel when you got that? Were you just like, wow, this is amazing? Or were you kind of...
Was the Foo Fighters a
get your
band
stride,
before
or-
you got in them?
Was it?
2 questions at once here, but I want to know.
I'll
before
get them
Clint,
both.
Yeah.
Was the Foo Fighters a band before
Oh
you
yeah,
were in
no,
them?
I joined right after they had made their third record. So they
Right.
were already, they were like my favorite band, at
Wow.
that time. So in answer to your question, how I felt, I felt like like my dreams had come true,
Yeah,
Like I really could not. It was, of all the bands, of all the rock bands that were out there at that time, that was the one that like with No Use for a Name, every time we would get ready to go on tour, we'd always give our booking agent like our dream list of bands that try to get support slots, and Foo Fighters was like always at the top of that. So
That's class.
yeah.
And then you got selected for that. And was it an instant life changer?
It wasn't. It was in the sense that all of a sudden I was in this band that was a lot bigger than any band I'd ever been in. But, I was still living in my apartment back in San Francisco with my friends. And so, I'd go out and do all this crazy stuff out on the road, and was exposed to this, just like a crazy world that I'd never seen. And just even things like I'd never had my own hotel room on tour. I'd never had like, a bunch of road crew dudes. Like I didn't have to touch my guitar. You know what I mean? I didn't have to change my strings. Like all that kind of stuff it's just like little things like that are totally different. But then I'd go home and it was just, I'd just be with
How old were
my
you?
friends back in San Francisco. I was 28.
28. And then, like I said, so it was kind of like a life changer, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then how did you deal with all the fame and all that straight away?
Well, that's the funny thing. Like even now, 18 years into it, like I'm not like a celebrity really. Like
No.
in like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not Justin Timberlake. You know what I mean? I'm not like a recognizable guy. Like and I'm in a band, so, and I'm not the front man. You know what I mean? So that side of it has never been a huge factor. I mean, maybe if we're on tour or something, there might be some fans out in front of the hotel or something like that. But it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Right. So
know.
do you get recognized a lot or not?
Not a ton. Maybe like by like really hardcore Foo Fighters fans, but like walking down the street. I got off a plane the other day. I was coming back because I was out doing a little solo tour because I just put out like a solo record, and I was coming back from that, and the pilot on the plane recognized me.
Wow.
And as I was getting off, asked me if I'd take a picture with him, and I was standing there like taking a picture with the pilot, and then I was like, all right, thanks, and I kept walking. And the guy that was walking off right then was like, why'd the pilot want to take a picture with you? I was like, oh, and then you have to go into the whole thing. Well, I'm in this band. Of course, like he knows who the Foo Fighters, but he didn't know who the fuck I was.
So you're not one of those guys who's like, oh, it's nice to come away here because I'm not getting, I can just be myself and not get recognized.
yeah, not too much.
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, who wants to take a picture?
Yeah. So you're a very humble guy, and you come in here, you talk to everyone, and you work hard. And it was funny, me and Glenn went to, I know it's a friend of yours, Travis Barker.
Sure.
We went to his gig with a Blink-182
Yeah.
in Vegas a few months ago, and he got us in and all that, and he said, come backstage after the gig, and me and Glenn were like, wow, what's this going to be like? It's like, we're going backstage at a rock stars event and all that, and we didn't know if it was going to be girls there, people sniffing cocaine or fucking strippers. Or that. We didn't know what to expect. Yeah. We get there, Travis is there.
At that level, you know what I mean?
You would expect it.
I mean, because you hear the stories about rock stars.
Yeah.
When we get back there, and Travis is there with all his kids, his friends. He's got a massive fruit bowl, a smoothie machine, a treadmill, and all that.
Battle ropes out, treadmill.
Oh no, I just
smoothies.
I just opened up for
kids.
Mike Ness. You guys will love this. I just opened up for Social Distortion up in Seattle.
Yeah.
And he's got a boxing gym out there with him.
Oh,
so
wow.
he sound checks, and one of the trucks that like carries their gear, when they get all the gear out, they set up the bags, and he's got a full boxing gym. So he sound checks, goes and has a full boxing workout, and then goes, and takes a shower, plays his gig.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What's it like?
It's a sign of the times, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, we're all old. You know what I mean? It's like
Maybe-
you can't.
maybe if
I
we
did
go
all
on-
that stuff you're talking about with the cocaine and the girls and all that stuff, but it was when I was in No Use for a Name and maybe
Right,
early
right.
in the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
But now, you come out to our shows. I always say people would be so disappointed. So let's just pretend that we're still doing that. But no, in the summertime, especially, we're getting ready to go on tour this summer, and it's like a big family trip. Everybody brings their kids and their wives and their nannies and everything, and it just turns into it's like a big roving play date around Europe.
When you're on tour, like let's see this trip coming up, how many times will you play? It's like
that's a very good question. I don't know. We're out for it's
normally
I don't know. I don't have any idea.
So normally on a normal
probably
tour,
like 4 shows a week or something like that. I'm guessing probably on
how
average.
exhausting is that?
It is. Well, it's probably most exhausting for Taylor, because he's the drummer, and super exhausting for Dave, because Dave's like bouncing around a stadium, running all over the place. It's probably a little less exhausting for me, but it's still it's exhausting because we have really long shows. Like our shows are like 2.5, 3 hours nowadays.
Right.
Because the band's been around for a long time. There's a lot of songs you got to play for people to, you want people to leave and feel like they saw every song that they wanted to see. So.
Do you still get nervous or not?
I get nervous. I get more nervous at the beginning of a tour cycle, like when you have a new album, because that's when you're playing new songs live for the first time. It's like I don't get super nervous playing a song like Learn to Fly that I've played 8,000,000 times and could probably play in my sleep at this point.
Right.
But a song off the whatever your new record is at that time that you're like, oh no, I'm gonna screw up the bridge. That's where you get that little.
Yeah.
What about, let's talk about your solo stuff, because I know you just brought out a solo album as well under your own name for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So for those shows, the smaller, more intimate shows, we just saw you recently downtown LA. There was like a couple of hundred people there. Great gig. Do you feel more nervous for those shows than you do doing Foo Fighter gigs? Because it's like the attention's on you more. Well, it's more intimate.
Yeah, right? I mean, plus in my solo thing, I'm singing. And I think singing is like the most ultimately vulnerable thing you can do in a band. You know what I mean? Your guitar is not your voice. Your drums aren't your voice or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like it's your solo thing, and it's like the lyrics and vocals and everything. So there's this whole other level to it that is super nerve wracking. But then also you're in a little space, so people are like as close as we are, and like you can see.
There's nowhere to hide.
There's nowhere to hide. That they know when you just blew it.
Right.
Is that something that you've always wanted to do, like go on your own and do your own thing, or?
Not really. No, definitely not when I was younger. I started making my own little records, like, in the early 2000s. I had a band called Jackson United for a little while, and then was doing a thing called Chris Shiflett and the Dead Peasants, and then now this. I think when I was younger, I just wanted to be the guitar player in a band. I didn't really I didn't want to be. I mean, I wanted to be on stage and doing the whole thing and the whole rock and roll thing, but I don't think I had any real like ambitions to like be a singer or a frontman or anything like that. I kind of tried when I was in high school, and I was terrible, and it was so kind of embarrassing that I was like, I don't want to do that. I like playing guitar; it's easy.
One thing I've noticed about people who's like successful like you, or whatever career they're in, going back to fitness, is when you come in the gym, you work your ass off. And I know I've been out with Glenn before, and it's like, I can't have any more drinks. I'm training Chris in the morning, and he wants to spar. But I know when you come in here, you work your ass off. And is that go on?
I was just going to say, it's something we mention and see a lot of. It's like the more successful people are outside of the gym. They're the ones that like really push themselves through that comfort zone and really grind in the gym. It's weird.
Interesting.
Whereas like the high school kids just come in and just mess about.
Well, I was going to say that's kind of I think that probably has something to do with hitting a certain point in your life where, like, I know for myself when I was younger, like when I was a teenager and a young adult, like I had no ability to sort of focus and kind of finish projects or whatever. I was just kind of a flounder,
Right.
And music was fun. And I did it, and I always wanted to like make it or whatever, but I didn't. I look back at that time in my life and think it was just a sort of lot of unfocused goofing around. Whereas you hit a certain point in your life, and you're like not only am I in a band and whatever else I got going on in my life, but I'm a dad too,
right.
And that's that's a full-time job in itself, just having a family. So for me, every moment of every day matters. And it's compartmentalized. And I got to go to the gym and I got to get that hour of just like balls to the wall.
Yeah.
And because that's the only time I'm going to have to do that.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
It's just that feeling you get afterwards, right? You feel productive after you've been in the gym. Like you would as if you've, just completed recording an album or whatever it is. I think you've done something with the kids. It's like that task's completed now. And you just feel better after it as soon as it's done. One question I had was when did you first realize that it hit that you were like, okay, I'm going to be a professional musician probably for good now? That it like really set in? Because in the early days, you're touring and you're struggling, you're in vans and you're moving around and all that. And like you said, in the beginning, you just do it out of love and for fun, right?
Yeah.
When did it kind of hit you? What time period would you say it was when you were like, okay, this is my career now, this is my job, this is what I'm going to get paid to do probably for the rest of my life?
It's funny because I didn't
Or did you never think like that?
Well, I do and I don't. I knew from the time that I was like maybe 14 years old that I wanted to be a musician, like for real, and that was what I set my sights on or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I went and did, played in bands for years and years and was in No Use for a Name. And actually, by the time that I was coming to the end of my time in No Use for a Name, I honestly kind of felt like, I'm 28 years old. This is probably as far as this is ever going to go. And that's cool. This has been great. I've gotten a lot further. I've been able to make records and tour. And I was starting to think about other things. Right before I joined Foo Fighters, and this is going to sound totally ridiculous, but like I dropped out of high school. I never went to college, and was a terrible student. And I went, that spring, I went to San Francisco City College for a semester and took like a full load of classes and got straight A's. And and it was the first time, like kind of what we're talking about, your time in the gym. Like I finally hit a point in my life where I could actually see that through,
Right.
And I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if I would have continued in No Use. I'm sure I would have, at least for a while. Yeah. But my point is I was starting to think about like, well, what's the next thing for me? And I was starting to, and maybe that was going to be like, go back to school. My dad had always said, if you ever want to go to City College or whatever, you could always come live with me for free. And,
And what would you think you would have done?
I have no idea. I have no idea because I never did it. You know what I mean? Because right after that, I joined Foo Fighters. Wow. And then that was really, for me, when it felt like, this is going to be my life, forever. I mean, I felt like that. I guess I just never really thought about that in No Use until sort of the end where I felt like, it's been a good run, but now I'm starting to think about doing something else.
Right.
Yeah. So, Chris, you played at Sunderland, at my home city, at the Stadium of Light. And I remember when you were there at the Stadium of Light, I think you sent me a selfie and you got a football shirt. How was that experience? I mean, I know you've probably traveled, you've traveled around the world, played everywhere, but how was Sunderland?
That was a great gig. I remember that day. I don't remember exactly where that was in the touring. I feel like that was maybe towards the beginning. I feel like that was maybe right before Dave broke his leg. I don't think he had a broken leg yet.
Right.
But I feel like it was on that run. And I don't know that was probably like the first big show in England that we did for that tour, I think, but I could be screwing that up.
That was a huge show.
But I remember they gave us, they came in and they gave us jerseys, with our names on the back. And like, as you guys know, I'm an Arsenal fan. So I was totally stoked, I mean, you're always stoked to play those big giant venues. And of course, a place like that has like, has a lot of, there's the passionate Sunderland fans, I know one of them sitting right here. But I remember getting that shirt and thinking like, oh, I better not say I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm just gonna make this whole room sad.
Just to qualify it, you're a legitimate Arsenal fan, because I remember recently you posted a picture of you wearing an Arsenal shirt in about 1996.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, you're a legitimate Arsenal fan. You're not just a Johnny come lately who's like pick a Premier League team since they got on TV over here and be like, I'll pick them and just follow them.
I'll tell you a funny story. I was recently on Jonesy's Jukebox, with Steve Jones, who's like a super duper Chelsea fan. And he asked me why I was an Arsenal fan, and it goes back to, I have like no reason really, I just picked him. But the reason that I picked him is because I had just read at the time that Johnny Rotten book, No Blacks, No Dogs, No Irish.
Yeah.
Where he grew up in North London and is like a rabid Arsenal fan. He just talked about it. And at that time, that was like 1993 or something that I read that book. And I didn't know anything about football. And I just thought, I don't know what that's all about, but that'd be my team.
Right.
And then that's the only reason that I'm an Arsenal fan. And then, when I started touring over there, I started going to games and sort of trying to follow. But back then, like, it wasn't as easy over here because it wasn't like on NBC and everything every weekend. Right. So now it's really like they've made it's great. You can just watch the games all the time now.
Now you're a football fan, you're a huge boxing fan, and I know that you do football, but soccer training as well with Steve and Kim.
Steven, yeah.
Yeah. And you obviously do the boxing training with Glenn. So, I mean, what's all about? Is that because something that you wish you could have done, like being a professional soccer player or footballer?
No, it's funny. I was the only sport I ever played really growing up was soccer, and I played that all through elementary school. And then I never thought about it back then, but I figured it out after the fact that the second I started playing guitar was exactly when I stopped playing soccer. Mm-hmm. And then all through junior high and high school, I never played any sports. And I just, I was like a musician. I was into like rock music, and I just, sports are so lame.
Right.
And then it wasn't until my like 20s that I started exercising and getting back. And then I remember trying when I lived in San Francisco to go play in a pickup game. And it was the weirdest thing because I was like, I played my whole childhood. I can't remember anything about I don't remember any. I have lost all sense of like soccer IQ.
It was like two separate worlds back then as well. I remember growing up, I was really into sports as a teenager. But then when I started getting really into music, I started like hating sports and hating activity and hating being fit. I was like, it was like,
I wanted to be like pale
going to the gym,
skinny,
and it's like I'm just so into music, and then it's like now it's become like trendy almost to be a musician who's like, not trendy, but it's like it's way more common now to find musicians who are into sport and vice versa. But my best friend growing up in England was YTS at Blackpool, and he was with Manchester United as a youth. And me and him were just rabid music fans. That's all we wanted to do was come to LA and play music. We was into music. And he had the same sort of mentality. He could have been like a Premier League footballer. He's like, I hate it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go to pre-season. I just want to go to LA. I just want to play music, write and record songs. And that's all we cared about. So it was like two totally different worlds. It was weird, yeah.
I think it's different now. Like I see it in my own kids. I have a 13-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And everything about like, my childhood was like divisions, you were like, and even within like, we were into like rock music, but like even within that, like I was a Kiss fan, not an AC/DC, there was even like to that point. Yeah. Right. So everything was very divided. And then when you get into like junior high, it was like, there were like trendy kids and punkers and heavy metal kids. And there were some mods and a couple of skinheads. And there's like, everything was in there, and then some goths, and everything was like very specific and particular. And if you were into certain things, you probably weren't into other things. You know what I mean? But I see it with my own kids that there's absolutely none of that anymore.
What is your kids into? Do they like your music? What do they think about what you do?
I think they do like Foo Fighters. It's funny. Right now, my oldest is listening to nothing but hip hop, like current hip hop. My middle guy is listening to Zeppelin and the Police, because that's what he's learning in his little like music class at school. And then my youngest is listening to anime theme songs. Right. So they're all like those like Japanese, crazy, like it sounds like, loudness, but with synthesizers or something. You know what I mean?
Where does your passion for boxing come from? Because I mean, just speaking to you the other day in the gym, I could tell like you're you're really knowledgeable about your boxing and you're a big fan?
Well, my oldest brother, Mike, was, and I don't know why, because no one in my family was like into boxing or anything, but my oldest brother, Mike, was really into boxing when we were kids. And he still is, but like he was the only person in my family that was into any kind of sport at all. Like, you know, we weren't raised by my dad for the most part, but he wasn't into sports anyway. And my mom maybe watched a little tennis on TV or something like that. But yeah, so my brother Mike, you know, and you got to figure that was through like those incredible years of like Ali and Frazier and Foreman, and leading into like, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard and Hagler, like all that stuff. My brother Mike actually saw Ali fight in Washington, D.C. We used to live back east for a couple of years, and he saw him fight Evangelista. I forget what the guy's name was, but he saw Muhammad Ali fight live.
How old was your father?
He was like a little kid at that point. My dad like dropped him off at the arena, you know, and he went in there and did the, you know, whole thing by himself, oddly enough. But so it's funny because I didn't like boxing growing up, and I associated it with my older brother Mike, and I would give him a stick about it. You know, boxing so lame, turn that junk off, all that kind of stuff. But somehow it just, as an influence, got in there. And then there was a point in my 20s where I don't know why, but I know what it was. I took a kickboxing class, and I took a couple of them, and I was like, I like that, but it hurts my feet, so I'm just going to take a boxing class. And then I started taking a boxing class, and then I just started following it, you know, and it was like, I just got
And you had
hooked.
a couple of white collar fights too, right?
I did, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Wow. When I was like in my late 20s, early 30s, I did like a few white collar fights, and I actually did a few. I was just at the end of being able to do some amateur fights.
Wow.
And I got beat down. Like everyone, I think I fought maybe 3 or 4 times, and I lost them all. And a couple I did all right, but just didn't do enough to win. And then I remember my first one, I got my ass handed to me pretty bad. Like, you know, where I was like, wow, that's a lot different than the gym.
How do you think that boxing helps with your playing your guitar for the Foo Fighters?
Ooh, well, you know, there was a time when I used to bring all my gear with me on tour, and I would just, in any town we were in, I would find a gym and go get a workout in. And I'm not that rabid about it anymore, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it's funny, once I started training, I mean, you guys probably do this too. Like, pretty much every moment of my life, I'm like shadow boxing in my head.
Right,
like, do you do that too? Like, so even before we go on stage, I'm like throwing punches and trying to get warmed up. You know what I mean? But I feel like every time I have like a spare moment, anytime I walk by like a window where I can see my reflection, I'm kind of like, you know, like it's like warped me for life.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about the big fight that happened last week with Anthony Joshua and Klitschko. How did you enjoy that?
That was absolutely amazing. I mean, like, the heavyweight division has been kind of subpar for a long time. I mean, really since like Lennox Lewis retired. Like, the last really, to me, amazing, you know, jumping out of your seat heavyweight fight that I remember that really left a mark was when Lennox Lewis fought Vitaly Klitschko. That was the last time I was really like shouting a thing. And like, there's been a bunch of good fighters through that time. And obviously Vladimir Klitschko is a great fighter, and it's not his fault, but most of the people that he's fought, you know, they get in there, they take a couple shots, and they're just trying to survive. You know what I mean? And this fight was incredible. It was so hyped up that at first, you know, you think, oh, it'd be hard for it to live up to the hype. And then the first few rounds were kind of boring, and you're like, oh no, is this going to be a stinker? And then all of a sudden, like, what was it, round 5 or whatever, it just kicks off. And you're like, what is going on?
Unbelievable,
That's really
what I said after the first 2 rounds. I was like, oh, I hope this is not going to be another Tyson Fury fight, where Klitschko never threw any right hands. And then all of a sudden, it was the 5th round when Joshua just come out flying, and put it on him and like nearly knocked him out.
That fight, that round was incredible because he almost knocks Klitschko out.
So close.
But by the end of the round, Josh was almost out on his feet. Like, he was messed up by the end. Like, so, I mean, that to me was like, I mean, the fight was incredible, and you know, what a great accomplishment for Anthony Joshua. I take nothing away from him, but I will say, I thought the stoppage was just a little premature. Just a little premature. You know? Which to me opens up the question, because, like, you know, he had thrown a lot of shots that round. If Klitschko, and he didn't land anything, not one shot in that last Fury landed.
And you're talking about Klitschko as well. It's like, it's experience. It's somebody who can go through the knockdown and come back and
the fight's
grab
already,
and hold and
it's already
survive,
gone like this. You know, he's already come back from that in that fight. Why not just let it go until the guy's on his back? Because had he landed one more shot, he probably would have been asleep. So why not just give him the benefit of the doubt? But to me, I think that makes for a great rematch.
He's so bloodthirsty, isn't he? Like, why just let him get knocked out?
He's not really bad. But yeah, I would have.
This is why he hates Mayweather.
I would like to have seen at least an extra 10 seconds.
Right.
To see, after that flurry of punches, like you said, Joshua was getting tired because he put a lot in that round. After that flurry of punches, just see what happened.
Yeah.
If you backed off or really went attacked again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think, you know, so that makes for a massive rematch.
Yes.
Which I don't know if you know, but Klitschko's got the rematch in the contract.
Right.
For the
it's
rematch.
not really been talked about in all the social media that I've seen. No one's really been talking about the rematch yet. I don't think. It seems to be just Klitschko's done. Joshua's the new king. No one's really mentioned the rematch yet.
Right. Well, it seems like, I mean, who knows, you know, what Klitschko didn't say anything about it being a premature stoppage after, after the fight. So who knows exactly what he's thinking, but you would think that he would want to have a rematch, and you would think that they would do it again. That's like the biggest fight for either of them to have. So,
what are your thoughts on Tyson Fury? We spoke earlier on a previous podcast about how my perspective was that he doesn't get enough credit for going to Germany and beating Klitschko pretty convincingly.
Right.
Whereas Joshua, everyone's hailing him as like the next Ali and whatever. And I mean, he's the real deal. I'm not taking it away from him, but I just feel like everyone's kind of forgot about what Tyson Fury went and done.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, that's kind of Tyson Fury's fault. Like, I totally agree with you. I mean, what he did is a great accomplishment, and he's a great fighter. But
it's his fault for not being with Matchroom Boxing and Sky Sports. That's
it's his fault for flaming out and going and doing a bunch of coke and going to rehab or whatever. Right. You know, I don't know the guy. I don't know what the reality of his situation is. But you know, if he wanted to have fought in the last 17 months, he certainly could have. So, you know, that's on him. You know, I mean, it's such a classic thing. I mean, how many fighters have we seen get to the top of the mountain and then they're never the same? Ever again. They win the title and they're never the same.
They normally lose at the top. Like, they'll win the title, then they'll lose a fight.
Right.
And then they'll go downhill.
Right.
They'll never win undefeated. Undefeated, then go off the rails.
Right.
No one really done that. I mean, Joe Calzaghe done that.
So he's breaking new ground.
Yeah. Who you a fan of?
I mean, there's so many great fighters. I love Triple G. I mean, I love Triple G. He's amazing. But, and also, you know, Lomachenko's probably, to me, the most exciting guy in boxing right now.
Yeah. I was listening
probably the best fighter in the world. You know?
Yeah, someone was, I think it was Joe Rogan, was saying Lomachenko was the greatest fighter of all time. That's what he said.
396-1.
Is that what his record was?
That's his amateur record, yeah.
396-1?
Yeah.
I mean, with his footwork, I know he lost his second fight though, right?
Yeah,
his first fight,
first or second fight.
But there's an argument that he won that fight.
There's a pretty good. I mean, if you watch that fight, I thought he won that fight.
He just got bullied a little bit. It's
right.
Like a lot of low blows and heads coming in. And,
Are you an MMA fan as well?
I don't follow it.
No,
I'm not not a fan, but I don't know it really.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. I never followed it at all until I started training Brendan Schaub, a UFC heavyweight fighter, and I fell in love with that sport. Kind of overtook boxing at one point. I'm back at boxing now, but
see, I think that's really interesting because you know there's so much back and forth about MMA is better than boxing. Right. No, boxing's better than MMA. And the interesting thing that I've noticed, and you're the only person I maybe know that this doesn't apply to, is that pretty much everybody that I know that's a huge MMA fan is not a boxing fan, right. And vice versa. Yeah. The people I know that are really into boxing don't follow MMA. It's like they're these two separate worlds, and they're very different sports and skill sets, you know? And yet there's this constant debate about which one, and I think it comes down to which one's more violent or whatever, sort of the underlying subtext of that debate always, which I think is just kind of silly.
One pattern that I've noticed, I think MMA fans are a lot less patient than boxing fans in terms of what they expect.
Oh, yeah.
Because the UFC have created this knockout, brutal, bloodthirsty culture of just like, this guy gets destroyed, this guy gets knocked out. And it's pretty, it's violent, it's brutal. And they've created that demand for it and that expectation for it. So now I feel like there's a lot more skill coming into MMA, guys with good footwork, good kickboxing backgrounds. And the fights are a little bit more tactical and a bit more standoffish, and there's more stand-up going on now than I think there's ever been in MMA. Correct me if I'm wrong, I've never really followed it that much, but from the outside observing it. And I think there's less tolerance for that among MMA fans. They get a fight where there's guys using footwork, being cautious. They don't. There's no patience for it. It's like 2 minutes of that. Like, ooh, fuck this.
Right.
Whereas boxing fans, I think, there's still a lot of impatience in boxing fans too. But I think there's a lot more, boxing purists who understand what goes on in a boxing match. Who will allow rounds to go on where it's more tactical and they're not just. Oh, I'm just tuning in just purely for a knockout.
Well, like my sense of MMA, one thing I like about it, if this is true, because for all I know, I'm dead wrong here, but since it's under, the UFC is like really, right? I mean, aren't there some other smaller ones?
Yeah, there's like Bellator.
Right, but the UFC is like the big dog in that game. So it seems like they all fight each other in a way that, as boxing fans, you almost never get that. Where like the best don't fight the best in boxing because they have different promoters and different network deals and all that sort of stuff.
That monopoly of the sport is definitely a benefit.
Right.
You get the best.
I mean, it's funny because when what's his name started Premier Boxing Champions, who's the guy?
Al Heyman.
Yeah. I actually, as much as I don't like the idea of there being a monopoly exactly. I did think, this could be a good thing if he signs everybody. And there's it's the UFC of boxing, and it, of course, didn't work out that way at all. But that is probably the most frustrating thing about being a boxing fan is that the top guys don't fight each other oftentimes.
I think it's got a little bit better over the last year or two.
Yeah,
I think
it did. But then the big one was Canelo Triple G.
Right.
That fight not happened.
That'll happen.
I think
it should have happened though, shouldn't it? It should have happened.
I actually think it's fine to let that one marinate a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because you see in Triple G's last fight when he fought Danny Jacobs, totally hard fight, probably his toughest fight to date. It's like how often do you see that guy lose rounds? Yeah, it doesn't happen. You know, and he's fighting this guy who's a giant. And the guy and physically, so much bigger than he was. And I think that was good to see him struggle a little bit. And maybe that'll make Canelo just a little bit I can beat that.
Yeah, that puts that puts the value of the Canelo Triple G fight through the roof.
Totally.
Now that we've seen Triple G has got an ounce of he is human.
Right.
I think it puts the value down of the fight.
Really?
Because some people thought that Triple G lost that fight. People want to see the rematch with Triple G and Danny Jacobs.
Right.
Where before Triple G was untouchable.
Right.
No one would touch him, and that's why they want to see Canelo. Now it's like, he's kind of beatable.
Interesting way of looking at it, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
I think the fight.
If you really want to get into conspiracy theory, maybe Triple G did that on purpose, man.
Maybe. Are you a Floyd Mayweather fan?
I am not.
No.
At all.
We've had this discussion many times.
We debate this all the time. I don't like the way. I just don't like his fight style. I don't enjoy watching his fights is what it comes down to.
You're right. He does like blood, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
He wants the knockouts. He wants a good scrap. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Well, I like a little bit of both. I like a little bit of both. I like the guys. I mean, the guy and Lomachenko is a perfect example about that. Like, just because you're highly skilled doesn't mean you have to be boring. That guy's as skilled as he's the most skilled guy right now.
He's aggressive with his skill.
Also the most exciting.
You like him because
he wants
he's
to put on
aggressive with his skill, right?
Yeah.
He's not that big of a puncher, but he still goes forward and he still gets involved with the fight. Where Mayweather was the opposite. But I enjoyed the Mayweather Pacquiao fight. I thought he would give him a boxing lesson.
Really?
And I don't know anyone else who's really said that. I think Glenn said it. Right?
I don't know anybody.
I
enjoyed
that.
it.
Yeah, I could watch that stuff all night. It's just so fascinating to see.
To make someone like Manny Pacquiao look like average Joe, it just makes you think, wow.
Well, he looked like an average Joe in that fight because he's old and shot by the time they fought, and he's also injured. If that's true with the shoulder injury, which who knows. But he's certainly way past his best fighting days. I mean, that fight was 5 years too late.
But so is Mayweather, I think, too.
Yeah, but with the way that he fights, a lot less wear and tear.
Yeah,
you can do that longer than.
That's what I like about him, though, because to me that's smart. He's used his skill and his intelligence, not even just his ring IQ, but his business IQ as well, to do what he's done and come out of it with his marbles still and be 40 years old and retired with the amount of money that he's got. It's just like, I kind of have nothing but respect for somebody who's done that. Especially out of the fight game.
To me,
insane.
It was what he did to boxing it was incredibly harmful to the sport. And I'll tell you the greatest example of that is the fight that we're talking about with Manny Pacquiao, where I was at this school fundraiser. It was actually Dave Grohl's kids' school. We were playing, right? So I was there with a bunch of people I didn't know. It was like a sea of strangers, and it was the night of the fight, and they had a TV there to put the fight on, because obviously everybody wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And for a fight like that was like, the biggest fight in the history of boxing, huge opportunity to go out there and put on a show and entertain people, right? And it was so interesting because I didn't know anybody, I was just sitting there amongst this big crowd of people watching it, and I was listening to them talk, and they were clearly like not boxing fans, just casual sports fans, It's exactly the kind of people you want to draw into, boxing, because boxing is like a fringe sport nowadays, And like when they're doing the ring walk and it's like the beginning of the fight, people are sitting there going, "Oh, this is gonna be crazy, man! Mayweather's gonna knock him out in the third," and somebody else will be like, "No way, Pacquiao's gonna get him in the fifth." All this stuff kind of based in nothing.
Don't know boxing.
Totally.
Yeah.
But but my point is, tons of excitement. Oh, it's gonna be nuts. Here we go. By the middle of the fight, it's silent. Right. Okay. By the end of the fight, people are going, "Fuck these motherfuckers."
Yeah.
It was anger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And which is. That's what I thought the fight was going to be, but that's like, it was the same thing when Mayweather fought De La Hoya, a huge fight, and I was at a party watching it, and people were just like, fuck this, you know what I mean? It's got to be entertaining,
Well, the thing that killed it was Mayweather's last fight was it Andre Berto?
No, I didn't even watch that.
Oh, mate, it was like, what are you doing? Come on, mate. Like,
right.
Why are you fighting Andre Berto?
Yeah. Right.
When you could be fighting Amir Khan, or who else was in the mix? There was someone else good in the mix as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't remember. What have your thoughts on the fight? The only fight that people's really talking about now in the world is, well, not in the world, but in MMA boxing, is Mayweather versus McGregor.
I think that's a really, really painfully easy fight to call. If it's a boxing match, Mayweather is going to win easy. If that's what they're going to do, then I mean, come on, no contest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you guys watched. I think you showed me that footage of McGregor sparring.
Yeah.
It was so bad that you're almost like, is he putting that out there as like a joke? Is that like just to fool the public? I mean, I hate to get too conspiratorial about it, but like, I mean, whatever skills go into being an MMA fighter, it's a different skill set than being a boxer. So to then go step in the ring against like the best fighter in the world, or
who's been doing it since he was born,
Right. I mean, come on. The guy has no chance.
Would you watch it?
I would watch it just for the freak value of it. But guys like us, we're going to watch every fight. They don't have to serve our interests. You know what I mean?
Would you pay for it? Would you pay $100 for it? Yes,
yes, I would.
Because the build-up's going to be insane.
Yeah,
and they're both going to earn like 100 million.
It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
I'd watch it just to see. You know what I mean? Because I honestly think in a fight like that, like Mayweather never tries to knock anybody out, but he might just accidentally knock him out.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be come on.
Next level. It's funny because there's so many MMA, talking about MMA and boxing, so many MMA fans, like they'll ask us, who do you think's going to win? And I'm like, well, Mayweather, obviously. But I think if McGregor lands a left hand, he's going to knock him out. I went, well, no, definitely not. Because look at Manny. Well, look at Mayweather's last 20 opponents. All of them will beat McGregor.
I've even spoke to Brendan Schaub about this, and he's on this. What you just said, he's saying, well, McGregor's going to be in front of him. He's going to be over here. He's going to be over here. He's going to be switching stances and fitting.
Brendan thinks McGregor's got a chance.
Yeah, based on this, that it's a style that he's never seen. So he's going to bring something in that Mayweather's never seen before.
But in a boxing ring, there's not one thing that Mayweather's never seen.
Right.
That's
but
crazy.
He said he could be doing really weird, freaky shit, and like he'll be just all over the place, switching stances and moving so unorthodox that he's never seen anything like this, that it will throw him off.
I mean,
And I thought that's the only argument that I've heard for McGregor that I've thought, wow, that's actually
that
pretty
rings true a little
point.
bit, only because the guys that Mayweather struggled with in his career were the guys that were a little unorthodox. It was Maidana, guys like that. You know what I mean? That do throw shots from crazy angles. I mean, hey, this is professional boxing, and if McGregor lands a big shot, he lands a big shot, and then he could certainly hurt him. But it's really simple. If it's a boxing match, Mayweather wins, and by the same token, if it's an MMA fight, McGregor would kill him.
How many fights is Mayweather? Like, he's 49-0, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
So in 49 fights, he's been hurt, I think, once, maybe twice. Once or twice. Mosley's right hand, and then against
also what's his name? Was it Sharmba Mitchell or one of those guys?
Yeah, in his earlier fights.
That fought in an early fight. It wasn't Sharmba Mitchell.
A lot of people say Collazo beat him as well. People gave Collazo that fight, right? When he fought.
Did Mayweather fight Collazo?
Was it Collazo? I can't remember. I think it was.
I don't remember.
But anyway, so just out of his 49 fights, everyone goes, well, if he catches him, look, he's been landed on clean once, maybe twice in 49 fights.
Right.
It's
against the best fighters in the world.
That's how hard it is to hit him. It's like, come on.
Do you know who
real.
TJ Dillashaw is?
No.
No. So he was a MMA, I think, featherweight champion. And I'm not sure what weight he was, but he was a smaller guy, a champion. And he's got the most unorthodox style you've ever seen, where he moves, switches stances.
Great footwork.
Amazing footwork. And a decent boxer, right? He sparred with Lomachenko. Lomachenko schooled him. And talking about what Brendan says, I would like to come back with Brendan with this. And well, look, there's one of the most awkward styles in MMA, even more awkward than McGregor. And a boxer, I mean, it's Lomachenko just plays with him.
What TJ Dillashaw said about that spar was that I think he did 2 rounds maybe to start, and then they asked him back to do 4 rounds or 5 rounds the second time. But he said when he sparred him for the 4 rounds or the 5 rounds, he saw that Lomachenko just watched his movements for 2 rounds without doing anything, programmed his movements and his style and his patterns into his head, and then just went to work. And TJ Dillashaw said he could just hit me whenever he wanted, and he was kind of pulling his punches a little bit.
Really?
And he said, I just knew he could take me out or knock me out at any time that he wanted.
Well, people, I mean, it's a debate I don't even understand, because it's just 2 different sports, 2 different skill sets, different things going to each of them. Like, you know, one isn't better than the other. They're just
different.
2, you know, it's like arguing about no baseball, no basketball. It's like,
right.
It's just 2 different things. You know?
One thing you mentioned before about Mayweather killing boxing as a spectacle, I wanted to relate that point to soccer, because I feel like the World Cup kind of does the same thing. Every 4 years, everyone's building it up. Oh, World Cup. We all get excited for it, right? And then I feel like the American networks are trying to sell this sport to the general public still. They want it up there with NFL and baseball and NBA. They want soccer to be up there. And I think the reason why it never will be is because the majority of casual fans who don't watch soccer will tune in for the World Cup, and they'll see a 0-0 draw between 2 random countries or whatever, and it's not that exciting of a sport to watch.
Right. And now aren't they expanding
and then
the amount of teams too?
They've sat there for an hour and a half, 2 hours out of their day, and seen no goals, and they're like, what? This is soccer? Like, what's the big deal? You know? Right. And I feel like every year the World Cup, the games are so dull, and it's just getting more and more strategic every year. You know what I mean?
I think you can kind of relate that to boxing too, because I was having this, you know, I'm obviously a huge boxing fan, and it's, you know, it's one of the only sports I even really follow. But I know so many people. I think I was having this conversation with Taylor, our drummer, recently, and I forget exactly what we were talking about, but I said, you know, in boxing, like, you know, 49 out of 50 fights you watch are boring. They're terrible. And it's like the worst is 2 guys holding each other and sweating and not doing a whole lot of anything. But then you get that one magic fight, like what, you know, like the Klitschko Joshua fight. That's just like fireworks, and it makes all those other shitty ones you watch somehow worth it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of sports are like that.
I'm such a nerd with it though, that I could put on the Showbox on Friday nights on Showtime, watch 2 prospects who are like 10-0 or whatever, and watch that, and just I could watch it all night, because it's such respect and interest in the skill of boxing. I don't care who's fighting. I just love watching any fight. I'm not watching it to watch a knockout or to watch like glory.
See, I'm the total opposite. When I was growing up, I started boxing when I was 10 years old. I had 106 fights in my career, and when I was growing up, I would go box at these tournaments, and because I was a heavier kid, I was a bigger kid, though I always put the lighter ones on first. I would be waiting. I would be on 60th or 40th, like last on these tournaments. So I've got to sit there through 40, 50 fights before I start warming up. So now, unless it's a friend or a big fight, I'll not watch it.
You don't give
That's
a shit.
why people come in here all the time. Did you see this in this fight? And I'm like, no. Did you see this?
Boxing for you, though, that's the same way I am with music. Like, when I was a kid, or even like, 20 years ago or whatever, like, I could not wait to go to anybody's show. I was so happy to be at a gig and woo, and never thought about like, oh, parking's going to be a disaster, any of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And nowadays, you know what I mean? It's
like a huge effort to get to a show.
Like, oh God, go all the way across town. Like, they're not playing till 11. Oh,
can't sit through all of this stuff. So let's moving forward. Where would you see what is your next goal? Your solo thing now?
I put out this solo record, and we're getting ready to go, do this Foo Fighter touring stuff. So, I guess my next goal, I don't know when I'm going to have another little break in my schedule exactly to go out and do some more shows for my own thing. Probably not for a little while. I'd like to do that again, at some point and go out and support the record. And there's a whole lot of places that I haven't been to with that yet. Right. And then I just, I want to make another record, quickly.
So is that kind of what you do now? That's like your goals you get. Does that make you small goals? Have you got a long-term goal or just little small goals even there?
It's just kind of small goals. I mean, I got obviously like being a Foo Fighter is full-time. You know, that's more than full-time. That's like, when we're working, that's your whole life, and then you've got your family and that's full-time, so between those two things, like I don't have a lot of extra time, but then in that I'm squeezing in like doing solo gigs, making a solo record. I got my podcast thing, that I work on, and then I've been working on this TV show thing that, fingers crossed, we'll see if that goes. So there's a bunch of stuff that I've got going on right now.
Mostly just to stay busy and keep being creative then, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I like working. Yeah. I got all these different interests and things. Since I started doing my own podcast, I've figured out I really like doing that. I like interviewing people.
What's your podcast called?
It's called Walk on the Floor.
Walk on the Floor. And what's that about?
It's like I interview mostly other musicians. Most of them are like Americana or country artists. We just talk about, same kind of thing. We're talking about what are you into and how did you get into music and that kind of thing.
What else does being a Foo Fighter do? Like, what else do you do? Like, you obviously make music, and is there anything else outside of that you've got to do?
Well, the thing is, like, when it appears that we're not doing anything, we're actually usually doing something. Right. Whether it's like, rehearsing to get ready to go tour, or making a record, or rehearsing to make a record, or, whatever it is. There's kind of always stuff going on. And then, if we're in the middle of an album cycle, that is just like you're just gone a lot. Yeah. Doing that, touring and traveling. And that'll usually, an album cycle is usually like a year or so of going out and promoting your record.
How close are you to the other boys in the band?
Well, we've been playing together for a long time, so it's like when we're and you wind up being in a band with people, you wind up spending so much time together because you're, most of being in a band is sort of like hurry up and wait. You got to get to the gig at 3:00, but you don't play till 9, or so you're kind of sitting around. So it is a funny thing because you wind up spending, like, I probably, if you added it all up, spend more time with the guys in my band than my family or something, you know what I mean? We're probably pretty close. But when we're not working, it's like, I think everybody just kind of goes and we've all got families, we've all got kids, everybody's like doing the same kind of thing. You're taking your kids to school and soccer practice and going to the gym or whatever it is.
With that said, let's get down to the real shit. What's the best story, or what? Give me if you can give the story. Since you joined the Foo Fighters, what's like the best thing that's happened? Like maybe the funniest or the best story that you could tell.
Ooh, God, that's a tough one. That's like one for the memoirs.
A real highlight.
A real highlight.
It probably involves the Gallagher brothers, right?
There was I remember, I have a real blurry memory of winding up in Liam Gallagher's room, like somewhere in Australia with the Man City game on and like smoking a bunch of pot with them. So it's blurry at best. God, I don't know. There's been so many like kind of like, wow, I can't believe we're doing this moments. I think like, playing Wembley is one of those moments. Right. It was funny. I was watching, I watched like the highlights of the fight, of the Klitschko-Joshua fight, and the announcer goes, "It's like a Foo Fighter concert here at Wembley, 90,000 people." I was like, "Whoa, that's wild!" Yeah. So there's just been so many. It seems like every time we put out a record, I tell you, the highlights, the things that I get the biggest kick out of now is like when we go somewhere we've never been. And it seems like every tour cycle, there's like, you know, you tick one more place off that
city.
box. Yeah, you know, or like new country, or, you know, we played in Colombia last time around. It was insane, you know, like it's crazy.
Does it surprise you that even still, like you've got fans like everywhere, like Colombia?
Yeah, well, fans are kind of different everywhere you go, you know, like even like, you know, the British fans have always been the craziest ones. You know, that was really the UK was the first place that we ever got like big, like first place we ever did our own arena tour was in the UK. And first place we ever played stadiums was in the UK, all that kind of stuff. But then you go to like, you know, we hadn't toured South America. Like we'd only ever played in the years that I was in the band. We played once in Brazil for Rock in Rio a long time ago, like pretty much when I first joined the band. Then we never went back again for years and years. And the last couple records, we've gone down there and done some shows, and that's just been mind blowing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like South American fans are crazy, maybe crazier than anywhere. You know,
really.
It's just.
Have you been in Asia yet? In Australia?
Oh yeah, we always go to Australia. Yeah, right. Love it.
What about Asia?
We don't tour Asia that much.
Just Japan, right?
Yeah. We usually go to Japan for a festival or two.
Do you sell out in Japan?
You know what? It's funny. This was actually quite a few years ago. You know, it's a funny thing. We have never done a Japanese tour in all the years I've been in the band. We go over there just for like festivals or a couple shows or whatever. And we had a full-on tour booked. Like it was probably, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago or something. And it was smaller venues, you know, for us. Like it was like theater-sized venues, and it was all sold out, and it was going to be great. But then Dave had a problem with his throat, and we wound up having to cancel it. Which has been kind of a long-running joke. Like every time we book a Japanese tour, we wind up canceling it for one reason or another. And I remember after that one, our manager was like, "Yeah, we're probably not going back to Japan."
One thing I wanted to ask you was, when you first joined, just the thought of being in a band with someone like Dave Grohl, who's, just for anyone who doesn't know, was the drummer in Nirvana, right? Huge. And the whole story with Nirvana and Kurt Cobain and all that kind of stuff. How much did that not make you nervous or anything, but how much was it like, wow, this is a crazy experience? How much of an experience on your psyche was that going into that?
It's funny because I was, like I said, I mean, obviously I was a huge Nirvana fan, just like anybody my age that, you know, at that time. And I was a huge Foo Fighter fan before I joined the band. So when I first joined the band, I would seriously have to like stop myself. We'd be playing a show and I'd just be staring at Dave.
Right.
Just be like checking him out. Like you know, like I was in the crowd still, you know what I mean? Like I gotta stop doing that, you know, look somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because it was totally surreal, bizarre, you know, like all of a sudden, like, I mean, just even funny things. Like I remember my first audition, like for whatever reason, I had it in mind that Dave was about my height, you know, and I'm like not very tall.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know what made me think that, but I always just thought we were about the same height. And I remember when I walked into the room for the audition, he was like, you know, he's like 6'1" or something. I mean, he's not like a giant, but he's a pretty tall guy. And I remember just thinking like, whoa, he's like larger than life, you know? What the hell?
Yeah, it kind of like starstruck a little bit at first.
Big time.
That's awesome, mate. So Chris, if people want to find you, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on here. This was great, mate. I'm going to ask you questions all day long because I think you're very interesting, and the way your life, what you do, I think it's just so interesting. And being from where I'm from, and being from where Glenn's from as well, I'm sure, we don't sit with people like you. But being in LA, I mean, we see you all the time. But I think it's great for you to come on here. You're very humble. You can see why you're successful. You're a great guy, and so thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And
I'll come back
if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Well, they can go to chrisshiflettmusic.com, or I'm on Twitter. I think I'm Chris Shiflett 71. Yeah. Then I'm on Instagram at Shifty71. Right. And then I'm on Facebook somewhere too.
What's your home address?
And you've got the Walking the Floor podcast.
Walking the Floor podcast. You can find it in like the iTunes store or any of those, you know, digital streaming things.
And the solo records on Spotify now too.
Yeah, it's called West Coast Town, and it's out everywhere.
That's awesome.
Good stuff.
Well, thank you for listening, and remember to follow the Boxing Life podcast on Instagram at Boxing Life, and as well, Glenn, like we said before, Glenn is giving someone a free training session. Once we get to 50 reviews on iTunes, you're going to get you a free training session. So leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone.